And when we do say no all the time, which would be more true of us than not, because as you said, we've got a million things to get done in a day, right? But when we do that, pretty soon they stop asking. Pretty soon it's just a lot easier and is to pick up the screen, to read, to do something else. And the other thing, that there are houses where people say yes, and then that pretty soon that's where they want to be. They want to go to those houses and do things.
What I do with my kids is I try to teach consequences, and so they learn reasoning, and because of that, when they do that, they kind of understand fairness, because you're not giving them things you want them to do, tasks you want them to do, and they don't, why do I have to do that? And it means you have to invest a little bit more time in the front end, but then you get the payback.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just, you have to do that. Just don't ask, just do it. And that doesn't come across well with my kids. I'm teaching them to be very independent. And I don't want to be this authoritarian over them all the time, where then they're resenting me, and then they want to rebel, which, some rebellion's good. But teaching that there's consequences for things. Why do you need to clean your room? Well, things are organized. It's easy for you to find things. You're afraid of spiders.
That's a good one.
There's spiders in there. There's a lot of ways to reach them. If you take that approach, things will come easy. And then they start learning that with everything there's fun.
Yeah, that's exactly what this authoritative parenting would teach. That discipline is them learning to make these decisions on their own, and it's okay if they ask why, because you can tell them. But the fact is that you want them to begin to process that as something happens with the with the beds or whatever it's with. Okay. Oh yeah, great word.
The role of a parent as a coach rather than I created you and you what
you do what I say. Yeah. Ultimately, you want them to do what you say.
Make mistakes and then let them suffer the consequences. That's how they're going to start realizing that, hey, what he's saying makes sense.
And what he said he'll do. If we're going to go out to the movie, everybody's going to get in the car who did what they were supposed to do today, and have a good time and go get ice cream. You can stay here and make your bed if you want to, but we're going. That's right. And I think the difference another difference between the authoritarian and the authoritative parent is, if you've got one who's always the one not doing what they're supposed to do, making the mistakes, being left behind in whatever ways, whether you're actually leaving a house or not, then you have to be careful to quickly start coaching that one differently, because they could very quickly become the mess up in the family forever. Come back at age 40 and everybody's expecting them to mess up. So you have to be aware of the ones that are giving us more trouble following through on the kind of responsibilities and the adult-like behaviors, and help them, again, go back to the top, again and again and again and again, until whatever the activity is, until we've got it, it just happens. It just becomes part of the breathing in and the breathing out. Okay, you've got a sheet called 40 Assets. And it's a C1, I think. And there's a page of external and internal assets. And basically this grew out of a research on adolescence of the kids who were functioning very independently and very, very successfully, and those who were really struggling. And so the ones who were really seemed to be in a flow that was successful had these assets. So I'd like for you to look at the page. And on page 1, we've got external. There are assets that they noticed that had to do with their support that they got. And these kids had support from family, whether it was in family communication or whatever. They had other adult relationships. They had a caring neighborhood, a caring school climate, and parent involvement in schooling. That they felt supported by the adults around them. Of those, how many of you would say that the weakest link there is caring neighborhood? See that too? No, some of you don't. Most of you don't say that. So that's one of those really huge things. Of course, you'd feel safer setting your kids free to go outside if you thought it was a caring neighborhood, right? If you thought if they get in trouble over here, so-and-so's around. They could go to so-and-so if they needed to, right? A lot of neighborhoods, people don't really know each other that much now, and so there may not be that level of support, but it looks like that's not an issue for you guys. That's great. Then there are the ways in which these kids had activity and things that empowered them, made them feel strong, made them feel capable and confident. And they were these 4 things here. And then they had high demands, right? High demands is a positive thing. The high demands would be family boundaries, school boundaries, neighborhood boundaries, adult role models, positive peer influence, and high expectations. All of those things that had them reaching up. And what reaching up means, it's not meant to mean pressure. And this is where in our conversations we I think get confused. It's not mean you can't measure up and we're going to get you up there until you do. It means you feel good as you get up there. You feel powerful. You feel confident. And there's some level of pride in the fact that people think you can do it. Especially even if you can't do it now, they think you will be able to do it. You eventually can, I can't do it. Well, you can't do it yet, kind of piece. Positive peer influences gets very tricky in this era where we feel like our kids are in danger of other kids. So it's really hard for us to think about that and the older our kids get, the less likely we are to have any influence whatsoever on who their friends are. Not because we don't have influence on our own children, but because we don't have influence on the others. I can't make your kid like my kid. I probably can't make my kid like yours, but I for sure have nothing to do with the reciprocation of that. And neither do any of us, right? So the best we can do here is have them in environments where we know there are good kids, good parents, good adult supervision, and just hope that out of that comes this, at least on balance, overall positive influence. I'm going to talk a lot more about this one, but that one's there. What in this list of external assets, check the ones that you think your children have. Is there something you didn't check that you'd like to know more about how to make that happen?
Well, I have an only child who's not super outgoing and the opposite side of me. And our neighborhood doesn't have as many kids that he's not really in sports. He does at School of Rock, but all the kids in School of Rock, but the ones that are high school kids.
Yeah.
So it's hard to find activities
outside of school. Yeah. Well, before we talk about that struggle, there are two things that you need to know are wonderful things. One
Just
is...
a reminder, we have advising, so you're going to decorate doors at advising. And also, faculty, remember there's birthday snacks in the lounge. And Gary E. to the office, please.
Tom, earlier today, they came over and said they wanted the kids who were going to the art battle to get on the bus. That was great. That's right. So the research on only children is interesting. Only children may be a little bit lonely as a child, for obvious reasons, but they seem to be very stable adults. So we got you. He's getting lots and lots from you about that. And the fact that there are the two of you means that there's this closeness there that is a very wonderful thing in his life. But being around other 11-year-olds in a different situation in school is important. And I think School of Rock's a fun idea, too. And they like being with older kids, too. That's fun. But what ideas do some of you with 11-year-olds have that don't involve sports? Or has he done karate at school? Or mm-hmm. And now that he's doing it, what does he think? It's that getting in the door, right? It's that first.
And I think it's there aren't, you can't go out and play with whoever he is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's the part I think where by the end of the week has forgotten to make plans for him to do something.
Yeah.
It's different than when I was young and we didn't make plans for us. We went outside and played and came back.
Right.
And it's different now.
Right. Is he outside alone?
He'll go outside for a while. And he'll go outside and ride for 6 or 10 minutes and he'll walk the dog down and talk to the neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Then he's fine. You need to play him. You need to play him.
Yeah. No.
It's great, but...
No, but you're not an 11-year-old boy. Yeah. Any of you have ideas? Yeah.
I have an 11-year-old and he has a disability for 2 years. So we went from being a sports kid to I can't do any sports and I don't want to do chess club. I don't want to go to martial arts and for the pottery class because I'm like, well, let's decide what we can do with the rest of our bodies and God's given us. So we literally spent an afternoon going through everything you can do in Wichita. We settled on Scout. We hopped around and we've been visiting troops. But we found one and it's in a different neighborhood and it's a different kids and socioeconomic backgrounds they have and we don't know any of the kids and it's free. And so there's a lot of other ones of them. But we found a couple of things that we had to get about them and he had been involved in it and it went along. And we had failures. We showed up and he was like, Mom? No. All right, we did the 15-minute, stay for 15 minutes. We made sure we found a lot of kids that we really liked. Yeah, this was not part of our, that was not something we had available. We didn't make it available. So that's my thing. And I know I just found out a while ago about the breakfast for middle schoolers here on Friday. Because I knew that they weren't, from your last workshop we talked about religious activities. But I didn't know that. I have no idea about that. So I guess there's a Bible study every Friday morning here, and fifth graders can go to it. Give Aaron Dart your contact information.
There you go. Any other ideas that we need to...
I was going to say fifth grade, right? Yes. Okay, so I think you'll find in middle school there's a lot more opportunities to get involved in other things that aren't the school. And it starts opening doors to, some of them start as electives they can take, but then all of a sudden, I have my son would come home and say, I want to try for robotics. So and maybe a lot of them are sixth grade, but there's a lot of other things they can do where all of a sudden you're realizing, oh wait, we've got to choose, maybe fine art stuff, being in the play, or, I don't know if he would be interested in that, but there's ways to get on with other kids, and then all of a sudden you have some other opportunities, and they aren't just sports. So there's a lot of other things that will come up, academic stuff, fine art stuff, robotics type stuff.
Well, and you might even say to the advisor, we're really struggling with ways for him to get engaged with other kids outside of school, or to the drama teacher, or to, Ann or Amy in the office. Just say, would you be on the lookout? Because if someone else asks him to come be part of it, instead of you shoving him, then it will have a whole different feel.
And teachers, I think teachers here are just very good about, they're just the greatest resources because they know the kids that we don't know as other parents,
That's right.
But they're good
know
at
who else?
backing kids up, and if they're given heads up, then they'll help, all through the day. They're thinking of, so-and-so can, hang with so-and-so, and they're the greatest resources.
Yeah, use that.
And this is great, there's all the community service stuff. And that's what I didn't even know about. So do they have to have a certain number of hours, or how does that work? Five. It's only five, but they can do as many as they want. Right. And like last year, the fifth grader, Langley, was like, well, I just want to start, I want to get as many as I can. And she did all of them. And a lot of times, no friends, a lot of eighth graders, a lot of seventh graders, really got her out of her comfort zone. Great. Okay? And Mrs. Brake is great. She always has her phone, and you need to get a hold of her. And I feel very safe allowing my kids to go do things with her and me not be there.
That's a great opportunity to have That's a great opportunity to have your kids with other people and other adults, not you.
Yes.
And they're doing something positive with other kids, but maybe you're not involved with it. That's a great
That was another thing.
On the
Yeah.
adult, and a lot of them are lives. Right.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Good. Other questions about page 1? Yes.
Only on page 1.
Well, we can go
I'll wait for page 2.
one moment. Anything else from page 1? Let's turn to page 2. Sherry? Yes.
I'm noticing that we have a lot of little kind of white lies that are happening, and it really bothers me. And it bothers my husband because his opinion is, if she's going to lie about having Doritos in her room, what's she going to do when we trust her to go out and make her room on the weekend? So,
No kidding. What kind of a girl is she anyway, right? So let's talk about lies. It's hysterical. I had a sheet I was going to copy called 10 Lies Good Kids Tell, and I just left that on my couch and came without that. But so first of all, just think in your own head. Nobody has to raise their hand and answer this question, but have you told a lie today or yesterday? Or have you told a lie to a kid, a spouse, a friend? A lie could have been that you've been invited to dinner with your best friends for 3 weeks in a row and you haven't been able to go, and the truth is your husband's refusing. He doesn't like those people. And so you're clearly not going to say, you can quit asking us, my husband doesn't like you. Right? So the kindness in your own mind, the kindness, we're not able to make it, I'm so sorry. That is a lie. But it's nice. What we tend to think on things exactly like what you just mentioned, Sherry, is it means it's a character flaw. It means something bad. And yes, it does, and no, it doesn't. We want to teach them not to lie. We want to teach them to tell the truth. But we also have to understand how people work. If she wants Doritos and you won't let her have them, this isn't a bomb she's building, right? She's not going to tell you they're in her room, probably. So then it's not just a learning opportunity, but it's also a learning opportunity for the parents, too, to think about what's going on here. And we don't want to come at her like she is the most evil kid ever, and we're going to watch her like a hawk, because every chance she gets, she's going to lie to us. It could be the big thing she will never lie about. It could be in her sense of right and wrong. Eating Doritos, there's nothing a bit wrong with it, whether you think so or not, but of course she wouldn't want to go out drinking with her friends and get a car. Of course that's wrong. It doesn't necessarily correlate. But it is true that kids will lie about certain kinds of things they want to do that their parents have said no to. But they'll also lie about things to keep their parents from from thinking that they're not good. They don't want to say the teacher got mad at me today. They don't want to say nobody will be my friend. They don't want to say I got a D on this paper. They don't want to say things that make you look at them in a way that's not good. Well, what's wrong with you? We got to study more. We got to be nicer to people. Why don't they like you? Or the opposite. Those bad kids, they're not like you. All of these responses, the kids know what they would be, and they are avoiding those responses to cover something that they don't want you to see. Is that a lie? Yes. Does it make sense in your human knowledge of how people act? Yeah. So, the real question is then what do you do about that? Because if you've told her not, you take them away. I mean, you can spend an hour talking about lying, and you can punish, but if you don't want her to have Doritos in the room and you find the Doritos in the room, you can also just take the Doritos away and see what happens next. Or you can say, I saw some rats in your room. It's kind of the spider thing. But we jump to there's something really, really, really bad about this. And it is disconcerting, but it's not evil.
Well, do you notice that middle schoolers start doing that? My son never lied about anything ever. He couldn't tell me. Until about this year.
It's the brain exploding.
And he started telling me no, do that, and then he was punished for the lie, but not for what he did.
Yeah.
So last night I caught him doing something he didn't supposed to be doing, but he told me about it right away. But then I think we're honored.
But you did it.
I noticed him doing this before until this year.
Well, that's exactly what's happening. When the brain begins to do that blossoming, 100 things come up that never would have before. It was right and wrong yesterday. It was black and white. It was very clear. And now, well, I don't know. I don't have to tell her. What she doesn't know won't hurt her. Right? Or what she finds out will make her really mad. I don't want her to be mad at me. You can just expect, if you think that your child is going to go from 10 to 18 without ever telling a lie, that's not true. That's not going to happen. So it just makes you vigilant, but it also makes you wonder and become understanding too, and try to figure out what is the reason, what is going on here that this is happening, and how do we get it stopped. Part of the reason for that is they're trying to have their own life, where nobody's telling them what to do and setting all these rules. And I'm telling you, if they haven't gotten their own life before they go to college, and they haven't had any of that desire to, they miss something. So yeah, you could keep them really good and really innocent and really under your thumb, but someday you're not going to be there, and they won't have had any of these other experiences. Anything else on that page that you want to talk about? Mm-hmm.
How do you learn to look at your children as what you want them to be rather than as what in your mind you know? How do you look at them as adults? I need to learn how to start looking at my child as a grown-up person with his own. A short example this morning, someone called and said, well, could I stay, could I come hang with could I come hang with Johnny until the game at Trinity tonight? And I just, not thinking, oh, yeah, sure, And when later on, Johnny said, Mom, you have to be careful. But he said it in such an adult way. He said, you have to be careful what you say because, it's really making, I have plans and you're really changing my plans now. I can't do that, But the way he said it was like, made me look at him like, oh my gosh, he said that like a colleague would say to someone, like another adult would say to me instead of just like, I wish shouldn't have told him that or whatever. He just said it very calmly and grown up like, and I'm like, who is this person? But I want if I can learn to recognize that quality in him more, just like the exuberance, I can learn to recognize that more when it's there, or I can learn to bring it out more even if I can recognize it, So what is the best way to do that?
Well, it's happening. Well, no, it's happening through these experiences, right? You are getting more and more evidence of that, right? And sometimes we're not looking at them as whether they're a child or an adult. We're looking at them as the adult we want them to be someday. So it's both. He's showing you in different ways how he is growing up and he is capable, and you have to put that in the memory in front of other things, in front of all the memories of how he isn't, because you've got a lot of those. I think there's also a piece about respecting them for the person they are, and respecting their space and their boundaries. And so when we make plans for them, just having it in mind that we should actually talk to them about. Now, are they 8? Maybe not as much, but are they 10, 12? Oh yeah. I mean, they're people. We want them to respect us and to think about what's going on with us, and we have to model that and show them how we do that. So if this paper about these assets is useful to you later as we go through this planning exercise that we're about to embark upon, then you can refer back to it, just like you can refer back to your values sheet and your the other sheet that we did.
We are we're going back to A. And if you would like to stand and wiggle around a little bit, I can give you 4 minutes. Or however long it takes you to sit.
Did you talk about, just looking at this internal assets, what's resistance skills?
Oh, that's being able to say no.
Okay.
That's being able to say no to your friends it's being able to say no to a stranger who wants you to get car. It's being able to feel comfortable standing your ground and leaving. They do a lot of that training in the drug ed classes and those values classes, but that's clearly one of those things that takes practice, because they're not used to saying no to their friends or other adults. So, we've taught them clearly not to say no to adults.
Funny. My daughter, she's also an only child. And I find that her biggest difficulty in school is making friends. She spends a lot of time alone. And I'm wondering, would your advice be to go to her advisor and kind of, because when she's in class, there's lots of, she's friendly and all the kids like her, but now it's time to research.
Sitting right over there.
I'm sort of, I don't know how to help her.
I would definitely go to the advisor and maybe Carol Pinetto, but also the advisor, and just say, tell her
She's
that.
new, so it's...
So, because when the advisor can watch out for and tell you, there's other little girls who aren't having friends outside of school either.
I know, right?
Also, look for them, but it's very rare for those kids to find each other. They're just in this bubble where they feel like they're isolated.
Yes.
But another person's adult eyes on you help you.
Okay.
So both your advisor and Carol Pinetto can help with that. And I've got some, you email me, I'm going to give you my email. bunnyhill72@gmail.com. I have some handouts from other classes on building friendships.
You said Gmail?
And I could email me your address and all, because I probably won't scan them and send them through the email, so I will mail them to you.
Okay, because this has been a thing it's never really bothered her till now. She's starting to notice that she's different, is what's happened. It's never been a problem in elementary, but now
Well, only children don't have built-in playmates. So they don't learn the playmate stuff.
She's great with adults.
Oh, I'm
Well,
sure.
she could talk your ear off for hours. She's great with adults, being an only child. But when it comes to talking to another 10-year-old girl, no. Okay, thank
Not
you.
the easiest person to talk to.
No.
Is your daughter in school here?
Yes.
What grade is she in?
Fifth.
Okay.
Kathleen Brophy. She wears, if you ask her son, she wears cat ears every day.
Oh, you know what? It's so funny. No,
All the kids know her because she wears cat ears
Yeah,
all
no,
the time.
because we saw her at the football game, and Carter's like, "Oh, hi." And he said hi to her, and he's like, "She's in my class."
See, yeah, she's
her.
all the kids know her. Like, that's not a problem. All the kids know her, and if we see them at Dylan's or something, they say, "Hi, Kathleen," and I'll often say to them, "Who is that?" She goes, "I don't know." Which is probably the issue. But when it comes to playing outside, she spends it by herself almost because it's easier. And she said to me yesterday in the car, "I see other kids, Mom, that it's so easy for them. They're all together and they're talking, they're running around. And I've never had that. And it's just about killing me." Sorry. Sorry.
Don't apologize.
I don't know how to help her.
Exactly. And I'm in that situation. I'm good. You do better. And it's hard.
God. That wasn't supposed to happen.
Okay. But I'll send you one. I will remind you that I sent it back.
Okay.
It was probably mixed in with some other sentences.
I'll go back. If there's an email.
I mean, she was really vocal about
Anytime she's tried, it's sort of, she becomes the little one that's saying to the other girls, "Hi," and they kind of ignore her, and like she tries, but she's not getting it.
Okay, come on back.
Oh, I told her yesterday, I said, middle school girls are mean, and she said, "Oh, I know, Mom." I said, I said, "You'll get through it. High school will be better, you know." And I know there's other little girls out there at the playground who aren't playing that way. But they never, like Money said, they're never going to connect. They need, so I think what her advice was, tell the counselor, talk to her advisor.
Is she new?
She's brand new. Brand new. Yeah.
So, being new,
Oh, and I tell her that, but.
well, it just makes you feel better. I saw your daughter. She was sitting at the information desk, and I was trying to find her.
Oh, she was
chatting away.
Oh.
I mean, she.
To an adult or to other kids? Yeah, to an adult.
She thinks me.
Oh, she's very personal.
And
But she tries, I think, to talk to the other girls the way she would talk to an adult. Because that's what she knows. She has two parents who are almost 50. So that's what her, yeah, so it's, but I think if you can, I tell her, try to find that little girl on the playground who's also by herself. Kathleen.
last name.
Brophy. Brophy. Like trophy, but with a B instead. Yeah, so she says, "Mom, I see them, but I don't." She said, I think what she says, "Mom, I'd rather just go to the equipment and play my
Everybody back?
games by myself."
It's easier to do that than to have them.
Totally.
Well, I scared you into quiet. But you're not all here.
I thought it'd be fun.
I'll tell you how we're dividing up the rest of the day, because some of you will be in and out. I want you to kind of know what will happen when. We're going to start now on the extended playpen worksheet. We will do like two or three at a time in a section. At lunch, we'll put that away. So we'll do the first 2 or 3 sections of that before 12. Then we'll get our lunch and sit down. At lunch, I'm going to go through, there's a sheet called 20 of my best tips for parents. So while you're eating, you can ask me which ones of those to talk about, and I will. But at the end of that, about 12:50, it's going to be an inspirational thing for about 10 minutes. That I would like all of you to hear, just because it's inspiring. Then we'll go back to the sheet and finish out the rest of the expanding playpen piece. And then at the end of the day, from 2:30 on, it'll just be, we're going to do questions and a closing activity. So that's kind of how this all breaks out, just so you know. Now, what happens next is, this is storytelling. This is stories about what could be in these different areas of life that children can experience that maybe they aren't. Maybe they are. I mean, it really depends on you, your neighborhood, your family style, how many extended family members you have around, what kind of school you go. It just depends on everything. But we know for sure that it used to be more common for a childhood to include these things, and certainly in adolescence, right, than it is today. So we're going to think about that. So, we go back to the boy who was willing to sit in the parking lot and wait for his mom for 3 hours. So I'm thinking, all right, what is it? What did we used to do that would have made that an impossible scenario to anybody I ever grew up with? Or even the kids I taught in the 70s and 80s and most of the 90s. It just wouldn't have happened. So what's gone? Why? I mean, I know we're afraid. I know that. As soon as they started putting kids on milk bottles who were kidnapped and all that, I mean, I know we got ourselves real scared. And then there started to be shootings, and now we just can barely move. I know that. But what's missing? What's gone from childhood? And I divided it into these areas that are on this worksheet. In the slow childhood mode and in the generation that we're in now, there's probably a few more topics, but they may just kind of get blended in today. I don't know. I'll see it. I'll think about that as we work through this together. The very first thing that came to my mind was places. When I was a child, there are places that stand out in my memory as if they were oil paintings sitting in front of me. There were places that mean something to me and that steady me in the world. There was a period of time right when this was happening that they thought, I said they thought I had MS. I was having some kind of neurological mess up that just eventually after 2 years went away. I was healed. And I was getting MRIs, several in a row. And people had said, are you claustrophobic? And I said, I don't think so. I don't know. I've never really been in a closed-in space before. But when I would get in the MRI and be in there for a while, I would start having these hallucinations. It was like, and I thought it must be like a sensory tank or something. But what I would see, like there was this movie going on, I'm wide awake, I would see this place where we vacationed as a child on the shores of Lake Michigan. And I'd hear the waves, I'd feel the tingling from the water splashing up. It was just like it was really there. It was so interesting to me, just from a neurological standpoint. But what I took from it was, when I was a child, that place meant something to me. It was huge in my life. And it still does. We go there every year. But I realized that it had become a part of my coping system. The knowledge of the place helped me to create this sense that I can live through these things that are going on in our lives when I was a child. And I'll be okay. And when I needed it, that memory came back, right? So it caused me to wonder, what other places were there like that in my life that meant something more to me? And I thought of a few other places. In my 8th grade year, my father suffered 4 massive heart attacks, boom, 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 boom. It was way before open heart surgery. So there was no way any of us thought he would survive, and couldn't figure out how he had. And during that time, there was about a 10-month time where my parents were gone. He was going to Mayo Clinic and someplace in Biloxi, Mississippi. He was in the hospital in Fort Wayne. He was just gone. And it wasn't like now. You didn't just go to the hospital and see people when you were a kid.
And they didn't care. They didn't let you in. For one thing, you could get sick when you went to hospital. A whole different era. But I was 14. My parents were gone. There would be a grandma or an aunt or somebody would show up, but I took care of stuff. And I didn't like it when my aunts came because they tried to take over, and I felt like I was there. You know, I was supposed to do it. When he so in our front yard we had a big maple tree that was a wonderful climbing tree, and all of my childhood I had climbed it, and I would sit up in the upper branches and watch the other kids play, watch the people walk by, and just watch life go on. It was just like my own little movie theater. And on the day when my father was supposed to come home from having been gone for months, I was sitting up in that tree, and I saw the car come down the street and pull in the driveway, and you would think at that moment I would be out of the tree, right? But I sat there, and when my father got out of the car, he weighed 140 pounds. He had been a 260-pound man before that. And he was feeble. He had been this strong, never sick, amazingly healthy, vibrant person. And we'd been scared to death that he was going to, there's been this fear that you get with heart attack kind of thing. I just sat there and watched them go in the house, and for the longest time I couldn't move. I was just, I don't know what I expected, but I was just a kid. But the vision of him, that night I did come down. That night I fell asleep, and when I woke up in the morning, my whole body was asleep, like when your foot goes to sleep or something. My whole body was asleep, and I was just frozen in bed. I don't know if I'd slept well at all in all those months, but when my kids started climbing trees, and if I go outside and call Harrison, where are you? I could pretty much count on if I couldn't find him, he was in the tree, and it dawned on me that was a place, that was a place where so much of my childhood got thought out. I thought about what I saw. I reacted to things and sat there and reflected on them from a vantage point much differently. So that was a place. Then in our backyard we had this grape arbor. So a grape arbor that has been untended and that doesn't really bear fruit is just like a cave. All this stuff is overgrown, and you can get inside and nobody can see you. It's a great little place to play. And my mother wouldn't let us get a cat, so we got a cat, and we lied, and we kept the cat in the grape arbor. And so we couldn't wait to get outside in the morning and go to the grape arbor. And our mother, what are you doing? So that was one of those places where we had a life that was ours, that she couldn't invade. I had a student whose mother had a brain tumor. When she was a freshman, her mother was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and she happened to be in just the most amazingly close class. They all loved it. They'd always loved each other, but they all loved each other in high school, and they took such care of her. And it was a horrible 2 or 3 years. It was just as horrible as that a brain tumor can be. And in her junior year, her mother died. So a year later, when she was a senior, she was brought to my office one day, sobbing uncontrollably, could not speak, could barely breathe. And so she sat down on the couch, and I closed the door and sat down beside her, and I tried to figure out, because she couldn't tell me. I assumed. I tried to remember, was this a year later? Was this an anniversary of something? And I knew that her father was getting married. Remarried. So finally, I just said, "Is this because your dad's getting married? What's happened?" And it just took her forever to even be able to speak. And finally, she just turned to me and she said, "I can't see my mother's face unless I go to the living room where she sat in the chair and look at the chair." so I can't move out of the house. I don't want to leave that behind. And it just, I mean, we have those. We have these things, right? But this importance of place in our fabric of how we think and how we go through life, right? It's so important. And so I try to think to myself, oh, there's one more. I've told you that we all walked to school in my town. And it was a small town, but it wasn't that small. I mean, it was a long way to it wasn't far to the elementary school, but it was far to the junior high school. So it was probably, I don't know, 2.5 miles to the junior high. But I had plotted out, in my own way, that it was less far if I would hit some alleys instead of go on the sidewalks. The only trouble was that at this one alley there was a mean dog, and he was on a chain. And when I would go by, I mean, there's no question that he would have killed me if he'd gotten loose, but he was on a chain. But if I would go down that alley and just kind of stay on one side of the alleyway, he would get up on his haunches and growl and slather and all this at me and pull as hard as he could on that chain. But it was closer. I mean, I could sleep a little longer. And once I'd done this once, then I just thought, you are so tough. I mean, you just brave the monster every day. It just doesn't matter a bit to you. And I just loved doing it then. I mean, it was like it was some kind of a gauntlet that I could go through, and I felt so good about it. And then all of a sudden the alleys took on this new kind of, we don't have alleys where I live here in Wichita, but this new kind of mystique of this place that's there but nobody goes. And so I thought to myself, do my kids have places? I mean, except for their rooms, which I can't really say would fit any of these particular examples or anything. But do they have places where that live in their memory as significant in making them who they are, and a place to retreat to in trouble, or a place to retreat to for memory, or a place to retreat to for strength? What are and how do you get those places if you don't go outside? How do you get those places if you don't go outside without your parents? So I pose that question to you. Do you have places like that?
Connor Liu, if you can come to the office, I have a computer for you. Connor Liu, to the office for your computer. Thank you.
So first question is, do you have places you can remember like that? It doesn't have to be from your childhood, but the real deep ones probably will be. And do you think your kids do? So there's two columns here. There's one for you to jot down what might be some of those experiences. And then there's a place for you to jot down what might be those for your kids. And if not, how do we get them out to find some? And I will give you about 7 minutes to think about that and write some things down. One girl told me, I'll interrupt your thought, this girl was a 7th or 8th grader, and she was in her 14th school. Her dad's work had just taken them from pillar to post. And I said, well, what's your favorite place, or what is there any place you like better than the others? She said, the only house I even remember is my grandmother's, because it's always there. That's the place for me where I think of family and the constant kind of life going on. It could be. That's a really good question. For me, it was, although I did grow up kind of in one place, but for me it was that we had one place where we always vacationed together for a month every year. So that became a constant. But for that girl, it was grandma's house. But it could be related to a thing. My daughter used to, when she was little, she used to go out and get in our hammock, and she'd be out there for hours at a time. She'd write books, and she'd sit. I mean, she just was there. But the hammock could have gone to another house. Right? It wouldn't have had to just live in that backyard. It could have. So maybe there's some things like that could become. And maybe you have to ask your kids. What is there a place you remember or think about in your memory? I had a childhood memory of a window in a stairwell that had 3 colors in it. But I couldn't think of any house we'd ever lived in that had that. And then when my daughter went to KU, her dorm was right off of, I think it was Ohio Street, and I saw this house that looked familiar. And it was in apartments, and my parents had lived there for 6 months. And so when I went in, I said, "Can I look around?" I thought, "Is this someplace I know?" And when I started up the stairs, there was that window. Right there. It was the only childhood memory I have before I was 5, so it was important. But I bet they might have a memory.
Like right now, I jot down is their grandparents' place, because that's where we've been. But then,
and do they bike along the river, or do they go to a park, or is there wherever you live? You know, I mean, that an experience that might have replicated in more places.
Right now, it's only like 2 years here, 2 years, 3 years there.
So when we get done with this whole exercise, this might be one that isn't going to be powerful in your experience or for your kids, but you still might be thinking about it. What some kids would say to me is, if I talk about this with students, is it's when I go back to camp every summer. I go to the same camp every summer. I have powerful outdoor nature, spirit-filling experiences there. So I mean, maybe it's something you create.
Do you feel that the value of place, and I totally get what, I just have that kind of mind too, where I visualize and I absorb places rather than just, be in it. And as my life goes on, different things bring back memories of different places, and there's some bad memories, some good memories, but whatever. The value of place is very strong to me. But I feel like the strongest values are from really weirdly from childhood, where I might not remember what I ate, this morning for breakfast, but I remember how like a courtyard with flowers or something like that felt when I was like 6 or 5 or whatever. So do you think in that sense it's too late for most of our kids because they're in middle school already? And
I think they might already actually have some.
Okay.
But I guess the question I'm posing is, would they have more if they explored further? It's not that they don't have any, because I'm guessing they do, but they might have more personal, intimate, alone, reflective pieces if they were moving around.
Yeah.
But think about your neighborhood and your boys.
Yeah.
And I bet they have some. I bet they have some of I bet they have some of even coming through the fence. I bet they have some kids who've been here their whole life would have some here on campus. Or not even their whole life, but in times when they were pretty much moving around and free to move around. And you'll walk, if you went to school here, you'll walk into the quad or the amphitheater or a gym or somewhere, and then just be overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, I was sitting here on 9/11, or I was, these, and now this has become a part of the picture. This one may be one of the harder ones, by the way, but I think what's interesting about it is it's directly related to being cut off from the outside world. I mean, it really is. It's directly related to being in the house. And now you think about being in the house with the phone in front of your face. It's not even, grandma's rocking chair. It is. So the putting this down and moving out creates more possibilities for nature to become a part of the who you are, and the soothing part of who you are. So, okay, you will, more ideas will come to you about this, and you can ask your kids about this. Where do you feel most peaceful? What are places that you think about, or that you daydream about, or that you maybe even long to be at? You can ask them too, but I think it's providing opportunities. That's what I think is the key of this one. Okay, so the next one is children in their move from childhood to adulthood need to have lots of experiences where they uncover for themselves talents and strengths that they get to claim that they didn't even know they had. And probably you didn't even know they had either, but maybe not. Maybe you do know that. But they need to have opportunities to do that. Now, some of this happens in a very organized way. Some of this happens because you have them involved in sports and all of a sudden one of them can really run or really hit that tennis ball, or something happens and they, wow, you can do this. And they love doing it, that they do it and then they can't wait to do more of it. It feeds, it grows something. Or all of a sudden they've got crayons or pencils or paints in their hands, and all of a sudden something is happening that you didn't even know they could do. And they didn't either. And then here it kind of now all of a sudden they can't get enough of it. They want to do more of it. Then it becomes such a piece of who they are and who they know themselves to be. Or that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. But some of it isn't a talent that gets uncovered. That's one part. It's a strength that gets uncovered. It's it's like me going down the alley. My kids wouldn't go down that alley. I can tell you 100% sure. They wouldn't go down as adults, and they wouldn't have gone down as kids. There are all kinds of strengths that they had. They would have not done that. The same token, none of my kids and none of us in my family would ever go up high anywhere. When we do it, we pass out. So we're just complete idiots, scared to death. But we find through life, right, that there are these things that we can do that tell us who we are. This is the point of it. They tell us who we are, right? One thing that I know for sure in my own growing up was there are a lot of things my parents were telling me I was, or if I wasn't, I was going to be, because that's who we are as a family. That's what we do. That's what we think. That's what we expect you to do. So when I found things that were my own, I remember liking that. I was pretty compliant about being what everybody wanted me to be, but I kind of liked it when I found that there were things about me that they didn't know or that I found out for myself. One of them was, I've told you, if you were here last week, this story, so I won't go into it in length, but it was the Halloween story where the kids in town vandalized the month of October. That's what they did. They did it all over Indiana. I don't know why, but nothing was safe. Your cars weren't safe. Your pumpkins weren't safe. If you had an outhouse still, that was gone. Nothing was safe. And I always thought that was the stupidest thing, your trash cans weren't safe. Although there wasn't a lot of trash because we burned it. Most fun chore I had was taking the trash out and lighting fire to it. And I like to light fire. Imagine sending your kids out to do this. I like to light fire to little pieces of paper down in there, so that it was a slow process. But anyway, I diverge. On this one night, my neighbor came and made a terrible racket at the screen and just scared me to death. But I knew it was him. I knew what he was doing. on the screen to cause that to happen. But the next morning, when another neighbor was found dead of a heart attack, an old woman who had a heart attack that night, and I decided that Mike Wolf had killed her by doing that to her screen. And I was just obviously incensed about this terrible injustice in the world. And of course, everybody, shh, don't say that. These are our friends. But I wrote a letter to the editor of the paper, and I said, this is just ridiculous. What kind of a town is this where people spend a whole month out of the 12 months destroying everything? And in my own mind, and killing people. But what the most interesting thing was, all of a sudden people agreed. I mean, I was just an eighth grade kid. I mean, I wasn't really starting the movement, but pretty soon all the youth groups in town wanted me to come talk, and there were people raking leaves in their neighbors' yards, and everybody was on patrol against soaping windows and breaking things, and it was a complete change, complete. And I just felt like, wow, look what I could do if I really put my mind to it. It doesn't even take any effort. If I just spoke up, if I just said something, look what I could do. And that told me something about myself. It told me something about other people too. It doesn't take much to get other people moving if there's a reason. My 7th grade English teacher asked me to write for the middle school newspaper. And I felt so honored. I'm sure everybody else had told her no. But all of a sudden, someone said, hey, you can write. Would you write for us? And that started a whole lifetime of it. I mean, it just took that moment for someone to say that. And next thing I know, everywhere I go, I'm writing articles, I'm writing letters, I'm writing this, I'm doing that. Because I found that she asked and I could do it. And then people would read it, and then it was nice. That I found out. I found out I could do that. So what... And along the way, you find out things you can't do. My parents sent us to piano lessons. We went for 8 years. I can thunk out a couple hymns in the hymn book, and my sister was a concert pianist. We both went to the same teacher. We both went the same number of years. We both practiced the same amount of time, and it was a complete waste of money for me to do it. I mean, I like to know how to read music, but I could have done that a lot simpler than 8 years of piano lessons. So I found out what I couldn't do, but it's the things you find out you can do that is so exciting. And that you fall back on, because that becomes who you are. Whether it's a strength, whether it's a talent, whether it's just an inclination, that becomes who you are. So what are the things that you found out along the way about who you are and what you can do? And what do you think your children are finding out about themselves on their own? What do you think they're finding out to be their strengths or their talents or things that fill them to confidence? That's sort of the key. Fill them to confidence. And if there aren't any, then what you can jot down in there are notes about, so how would you go about opening something up with, not you saying, okay, we're going to take art lessons, or we're going to, but you being open to the possibilities for them and opening up space for it to maybe happen. And I'll give you a few minutes to work on it. to describe these experiences that we hope our children are having in these years is that they are the ones that fill the reservoir. These are they don't just, it's not just a checklist of, can I do chores and can I get down to the grocery store and back and can I find my way around the city, and it's not just like that kind of just checklist. It's like, can I grow to be able to both go out there and take care of myself. And as an adult, as a person, as a human, whatever age, when things go wrong, when things, not just there's a problem that has to be solved right now, but things are sad, things are hard, things are painful, things take for, whatever, when things go wrong, do I have a reservoir of strength and experience to pull from to keep me steady and get me through? And things are going to go wrong. People are going to die, people are going to get sick, people are going to have accidents, people are going to do things that they wish they'd never done. Things are going to go wrong. So, we're human. That's the human experience. So is there a reservoir to pull from? It's hard to imagine your precious 6-year-old child, 3-year-old child, 13-year-old child going through rough things in life. Going through rough things today at school. It just makes us sick to think about it. But that's on us. That's what it is to be human. We can't get sick about that. We need to be strong about that and be thoughtful about that. So that's what these things do. They begin to fill the reservoir. You're still writing here, but anybody want to say anything about these two that we've talked about so far? If we go back to the places, and this may help you, Winnie. If we go back to the places, it was a very important thing I forgot to say. So yeah, there are these outside places, and these places where we are on our own and where we're feeling independent and we're able to think, but we can't ignore home being one. Okay, so as my parents got older and they ended up in a retirement home, and then they ended up in the nursing wing of the retirement home, and we no longer had our home to go back to. What I found out was any place they were ended up being home. I walk in, I feel exactly like I did when it was a beautiful house and all the paintings and all the rugs and all the stuff was there. When I walked in to see their faces, that was it right there. That was home, right? It felt like home. I think for the home you're living in now with children, I don't think some of us, and some of you are better at this than others of us, pay much attention to creating it to be that haven. Pay attention to the smells, the sounds, the beauty, what's happening there, the attitudes and the way people are there. When you walk into a house and something's cooking, that's very different than something's microwaving. And believe me, I'm not being critical. I'm microwaving. Best thing ever. But that you walk into a house where the roast has been in the oven all day, or someone just pulling chocolate chip cookies out, or there's cocoa, or there's popcorn, or it's just the most. It does it to us, right? It just draws us in. And by the way, you want to draw in teenagers, you're not going to be able to do it with much, but you can do it with cookies. Chocolate chip cookies. But the other thing is, what do you hear when you walk in? Do you hear the news shows? Do you hear people, getting after somebody for something? Or is there music? Or is there laughter? Or what is that sound that surrounds the family when the family is together, right? So there's the attention that we pay to what greets us when we come in and what blesses us when we go out. We can control that. We can plan it, we can orchestrate it, we can do it. We can control that. And we aren't in the house that much anyway. It's not like this is a 24-hour-a-day thing, right? What do we wake up to? What do we go to bed to? All of these moments when that place becomes the sacred place, becomes the place that gives us strength and that fills the reservoir. So I totally forgot to talk about that. But you all would have lots of examples about how that happens. This guy, his name is Jim Trelease, the Reading Aloud to Your Kids guy from a while back. He wrote all the books about reading to your kids. So he came here once to speak, and he talked about how reading aloud to kids is something that should continue as long as they're in your house. You should still be reading aloud to your teenagers. And he had lots and lots of examples of it. But one thing he said was that at his house, his 4 kids, and some of them, everybody had cooking duty or cleanup duty for dinner at night. Mom helped with cooking, Dad helped with cleanup. But the way Dad helped with cleanup was he would sit at the table and read the morning newspaper out loud while the teenagers cleaned up. Because then he said, I tried to get the exciting stories first, who's been killed and who's been arrested. But he said, I got in there, what law is being considered in the whatever. But that's part of that too, right? That deciding what they'll hear, our voices, deciding what our voices will be saying or talking about. And that's that. Now we're going to delve in real quickly to the relationships that are rich and diverse. Even though this is my most favorite one, I will tell the stories before 12, and then when we come back, you will have had some time to think about what you want to jot down. I find that I grew up in a time when people were way more accepting. Now, I know this isn't true about that there's a lot of ways that people seem more accepting today. But when you grew up in a small town, you just assume there are characters and they're just there. You don't get to decide whether they're not. They're there and they're in your face. When you have a large extended family, and in my day and age, our parents never told our grandparents what to do with us. Our grandparents wouldn't have done it. They never told them, don't give them sugar. They never told them, don't drive with them unless, you've got this done and that done. And don't take them here. Don't cuss at them. Don't say things that I don't want them to hear. Don't be mean. They didn't tell their parents what to do. So that meant our grandparents were very interesting people. They weren't anything like our parents. And they were grouchy and they could be mean, but they were so, so I'll be surprised if a lot of great novelists come out of this generation because things are sort of sanitized, right? But anyway, there's something very enriching about being around people who are interesting, diverse, unusual, even peculiar, but certainly different from Mom and Dad, different from me. And it gives you an appreciation for individuality. It gives you an appreciation for being who you want to be when that is the case. So I have some particular memories, and the one, it's just, when I tell this story about my husband, he just says, you all were crazy. I don't even know why somebody didn't call the police. But if that guy had been at our house, I would have killed him. So this was the guy. I lived on a block. I could tell you everybody in every house, and everything they did, and all the things we did there. But at the one corner, down about half a block from us, was this house that nobody took care of, and it was falling apart. And of course, there's no zoning in a small town. But there was a guy there, weird as he could be, and everybody knew it. He was a peeping Tom. Peeping Tom was a phrase that did not really mean pedophile or, I don't know what it didn't mean, but it was said as if it was just a thing. Like you might be an engineer, he was a peeping Tom. That's just what it was. And he would come and look in your windows. And as a teen, don't think I noticed this as a child. Our bedrooms were upstairs, so there was never kind of a thing where it happened like that. But our kitchen the windows were alongside the driveway, and very accessible. and I would study at the kitchen table in high school, and so often I would be working by myself in the kitchen at night, dark outside, on something, and I would look over, and here he was, just like this. And, you didn't even say anything. Like, this would never happen today. So just look, and then, and I can remember thinking sometimes, doesn't he just get bored watching me just sit here? And I'm sure he did, because then he'd go somewhere else and look in somebody else's window. Now, why would it be that people wouldn't react to that? I can't even tell you. I'm not even saying to you it's a good thing. I'm just saying there are interesting things out there that have nothing to do with in here that are kind of worth wondering about. My grandfather was a big, strong man. He had a bad temper, and we just loved him to death. He was just wonderful. But I can remember one Christmas, somebody had given him a box of chocolates. And my sister had opened the box, and she had taken a bite out of lots of them, all of them. And all the cousins were there, and so he sat in his big chair, and he opened the box. And you could just see the fire coming. And he said, "Who did this to my chocolates?" And we all said, "She did." And he took her, she was about 4 years old, and he got her between his knees and squeezed her in there, and he just screamed in her face, "Those were my chocolates, and you should act, what is wrong with you?" And she was just, shell-shocked, she was just frozen. And, my mom's over there, nobody's saying, "Let go of her, Dad, leave the kid alone." And pretty soon, he said, "Don't do that again," and he put her down and threw the chocolates away. And, but we didn't touch his child, obviously, nobody ever touched it. But we didn't think, what a bad grandpa. I don't know what exactly we thought. We didn't think what a bad little girl either. We just thought that's what you can expect. If you're going to bother grandpa's stuff, you can expect that grandpa's going to get mad. Learn from this experience. Here's what happens. If you yell at somebody who gets mad, you're going to be sorry. If you don't listen to the teacher and she gives you an F, that's what you can expect. If you do this, if you do that, if you do this, if you do that, this is what you can expect. You don't turn then to Mom to deal with that. You just learn how to deal with people. You just learn how to deal with people. One of the things that was hard for me, it wasn't hard for me, but it was interesting for me, was as I was a principal and had teachers that worked for me and my kids came through, invariably there were teachers they didn't like who were fabulous teachers. And I knew it. And the fact that they didn't like them was their problem. There were also some teachers that weren't great teachers that I had to counsel out. And they were always the ones that one of my sons liked best. And he was always saying, "What's wrong with you? That's the coolest teacher. Why would you get rid of that teacher?" Well, I'd like your teachers to teach you something. I just think that's important. But here's what I would say about it. And finally, I said that mostly to my middle son, which was, listen, life isn't like this. You're not going to love everybody around. You may not like your boss. Your mother-in-law might not like you. This is what it is in life. There are people that you are going to have, and your job, if you choose to accept it, is figure out how to get along with them. You're going to be in this Latin class for 2 years. Figure out how to get along with them. Now, if someone beats you or something, I will come riding in and I will make sure that you're okay. But I think that this is up to you, and you will thank me for it someday, because you have lots of people in your life. You got to figure out how to get along with them. That's part of becoming an adult, is learning this skill of how do I get along with these people who I don't like, I don't understand, they don't like me, they do things really weird, they yell at me, they're mean, they're not, whatever it is. This is for you to figure out, honey. I've figured it out. I know how to get along with this person. So it's not for me to figure out. It's for you to feel. This is a skill. One of the most prophetic things that I learned that was on a more professional level was we used to have in this town a fabulous child psychologist. This was decades ago. What was his name? I forget his name. But occasionally we would have him come and speak to the teachers, and he just had such insight. But he told us about the Uncle Bill theory, and it just meant a lot to me. It has always. He said that he had worked with a little girl who was very troubled for good reason, that she was in a very dysfunctional family, and that it was creating lots and lots of problems in her own growing up. But that as time went on and he saw her more frequently, he wondered to himself, why isn't she more messed up than she is? How is it that she's doing as well as she's doing because of all this that I know about the situation that she's in? And he knew that from time to time she would say, I went to play cards with Uncle Bill, or Uncle Bill read me a story, and so one day he said, tell me about Uncle Bill. Who is Uncle Bill? Oh, he's not really an uncle. He is the gardener, and he lives in the rooms over the garage. And on rainy days or times when he's not busy, sometimes he can play cards with me, or we can talk. And he said, when we talk about protective factors, we can also talk about protective relationships. And those are relationships that we learn from that then help us as a buffer against the ones that are beating against us. And to have Uncle Bills in our kids' lives, to have these people who may not even be that tangentially connected, they may be way off here somewhere, but if they can just show the picture of acceptance, or the picture of kindness, or the picture of connection, or the picture of warmth, or normalcy. If you're in an abnormal situation, just the normal, then that's the kind of person that you want somebody to bump into who's growing up, right? My first year of teaching, I taught at Hutch High. It was in a very wild time in our history. It was very, it was the year of Kent State and the beginning of the end of Vietnam War, and there was lots of racial conflict, especially in Wichita, that was flowing over into Hutchinson, and it was just a wild time. And I was 20 years old. I don't know what my race through college was, but it probably was a mistake. But anyway, I wasn't that much older than anybody I was teaching, and didn't have a clue what I was doing, and loved every minute of it, learned a lot. But at the end of this wild year, I said to the kids, okay, write me a letter here. Tell me what to do differently next year, because I couldn't tell you. I had no clue what I was doing this year. And so they gave me all this advice. One great advice, and lots of pats on the back too, but one letter, I open it up and it says, Dear Miss Hellman, I have never known a happy person before, period. And it was like God made no mistakes. It was almost like, okay, that was what, how is that possible? How is that possible? A teenage boy could say to you, I've never known a happy person until I met you. So the Uncle Bills, these people, it's not that our children are unhappy or that our children are living in dysfunctional families. It's that there are still people out there, if there is something, if they're going through a hard time, or if you're going through a hard time, and they need to reach out or seek out, there are these other people there. And lots of times they don't look like mom and dad. They don't sound like mom and dad. And they don't say the same things that mom and dad say, or in the same way. So the things that we learn from this, I can tell you two kids' stories too. My middle son here, so we lived over by Riverside Park. We lived over on the river when the kids were little. And right next to our house, there was this little duplex that was sort of situated along our driveway in a funny shape. And there was this one old couple that lived in the back duplex, back by our backyard. And the man was old. He was very overweight. He moved very, very slowly. And he grabbed my son Harrison one day. Harrison was 6. And he kind of took him by the shoulder and he said, Harrison, if you ever see me lying flat down on the ground and I'm not moving, I want you to grab my feet and pick them up over my head and I'll be okay. So Harrison came running in the house. He said, Boogie Woogie told me that I'm supposed to pick his feet up over his head when he falls down. What? Are you supposed to do? Anyway, we talk about Boogie Woogie all the time. We wonder if he fell down and nobody did that someday, and he's gone now. And when we moved to where we live now, Katie was a little girl. She was 3 or 4. The lady next door's name was Ruby, and she was really a mean neighbor. I mean, she was just grouchy. She was nasty. She never smiled. I would greet her, hey, and I'd be as happy as I could be. And she just kind of response. But Katie was all the kids would try to, kind of go over there, and then she would shoo them away. And this woman would come outside, and she would inspect the blades of her grass. I don't know. I mean, really, she'd just look down and she'd pick one up. I mean, I don't know. But eventually, over the years, she became very ill, and she was in bed, and she was dying, and she was very ill. We liked her husband. And he was, at that point, he was nice. I didn't always say that way. But Katie was a little older, and I said, Katie, sometimes when people are old and they're sick and they're lonely, they really like to see a child. They like to see somebody young, and it cheers them up. It will make them feel better. And so why don't you take some flowers over to Ruby? And she was just, why would I do that? And so about once a week, she would pick flowers and go over and take them to Ruby. Now, this story isn't that Ruby became a nice woman. That's not what happened. That Katie had a great experience. She didn't know it, but she had an experience that taught her things that she wasn't having at home, that she wouldn't have in some other way. Right? It wasn't an experience that traumatized her. It wasn't an experience that was dangerous. It was an experience that told her something about all these experiences I've just talked about, which is the circle of people in the world is very big. And if we want to really live an interesting life and a meaningful life, we're going to have to embrace a bigger bunch of it. A more diverse group of it, a more different kinds of needs, different kinds of issues. Because out there somewhere are all the kinds of experiences humans have. It helps to interact with it. Don't know it.
So just thinking about this, and it's interesting because nowadays I think people are very anxious about letting their children, for safety reasons, kind of as you discussed, and particularly with men. And I think boys and girls like both need more role models, and I think that there's a lot of anxiety about men being involved. Like, why is that guy want to be involved with my kid, type stuff. And it just made me think of my older son starting to drive, and he has completely done it all himself. He has got a driving instructor, and I don't even know the man. He has been setting up all his own driving lessons, and the guy comes and picks him up, and he gets in the car, and it really made me very nervous. I'm like, okay, this is like one of the first times I can really think of that I put my child on a one-on-one situation with a male stranger and sent him out the door. I mean, I can't remember doing that fast. And I just kind of had to, think, Carrie, you do this for a living, you have got to realize that this is never, I had to talk myself down and let him know. That, they're spending hours in the car together, and he's really enjoying this little guy who has been a teacher and a principal and teaches Sunday school at our church and is a very nice, normal, older man, and it's been a really fun relationship for him. But it's been all I can do to not sit in the back seat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'm not let him do it, and it just started making me think
of the enrichment here.
Yeah, like it's made me think, okay, I need to be a little bit more, not that you want to put your kid in a safe situation, but also some of those anxieties, is that fear really founded? Or, you know what I mean?
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
Because if it were founded, you wouldn't do it.
Exactly. So I'm just thinking, if you're gardener above the deal, in today's day and age, it'd be like, don't you ever go in that house, in his room without Don't you ever go? I mean,
well, they had
people would be
hired him and he had lived there, so he wasn't an unknown to the family. But you're right.
But you know what I mean?
You're absolutely right.
I mean, I can see that you just don't. I mean, there's just that built-in, just paranoia about children with men. I think. And
well, I think you're 100% right, and it's not paranoia if there's reason.
Yeah, correct.
Well, I think it works both ways. Like whenever we have a female babysitter, my husband won't ever drive her home.
Agreed.
So you have to drive her home. Like he just doesn't even want to be in a situation where somebody can make an accusation or there could ever be anything misconstrued or so it's unfounded. He would never ever do anything. But he doesn't even want to be in that situation. He doesn't even want something to send me to the babysitter. So I think it works on both ends.
It does, and we have to be smart, right? We have to be safe, we have to be smart, and we have to, on our fears that are founded, we have to be very careful. But the whole point of this is that our kids are going to have interesting relationships with other people and learn about other people if we give them a chance. Not if we send them into harm's way, but if we give them a chance to move in and move out as it's comfortable for them. I mean, they're going to move away from. I mean, Katie didn't want to see Ruby for just that reason. She knew Ruby didn't like her, but there was, something else that she got from that. But if your son got in a car with someone and he was at risk, he would get out
For sure.
So that's the piece. Is that getting them to the place where he would get out. Where he would know to get out, where he would be the one to decide, this isn't working out. I'm not going there, I'm not getting that close. But now he's a person he knows. So you're going to think about this for when we come back, when we get back to this at 1. But now we've got a break. There's lunch out there. You can come back at 12:15 or 12:18, I guess. I will answer any questions you have about the Plenty parenting tips while you're eating. And then at 12:50, I want to talk a little bit about something I think is more heartwarming. And then at 1, we will start back on this. Okay.